Welcome to another and rather jam-packed episode of the fan-run Doctor Who facts and information series with low production values but high effort. This time we're looking into a number of rogue Time Lords that, if you ask most other Time Lords, would probably be considered troublesome or just generally a bit undesirable to their otherwise powerful reputation. Those old fuddy-duddies just don't know the meaning of the word fun, do they? So what makes someone a rogue Time Lord? Well, being a Time Lord is obviously a requirement, but beyond that, these individuals are really just Time Lords who defect from and live outside the established laws of Time Lord society, whether that be in a hostile way, such as breaking the law of non-intervention or posing a threat to other life forms, including the Time Lords, or perhaps just simply existing peacefully away from Gallifreyan society. Wherever they fall on this scale, there are a number of renegades considered by the Time Lords to be of a rogue nature. In this video we'll be going over 13 individuals in more detail, and no, I'm not just going to be talking about each incarnation of the Doctor. I know the number 13 may make you think that, but I'm not that lazy, I promise. Having said that, however, we are going to start with the Doctor. Now of course everyone knows about the Doctor, so there's not much I could say here that would be news to your average Doctor Who fan, although if you dig deep enough into expanded lore there's some pretty bizarre things to learn about our hero. There are a few contested potential origin stories for the Doctor, one being that he's either a reincarnation or a loomed clone of an ancient Time Lord known as the Other, covered in a previous video of this series. Or perhaps even the Other himself at a much later point in his life. The credibility of this possible origin is quite low though due to recent events in the main TV show. Speaking of which, there is also the Timeless Child to consider. As of Series 12 of New Who, it now appears a definite fact that the Doctor, or whatever life form eventually became the Doctor, was in fact a member of a completely unknown species from an unknown place. This Timeless Child was taken and experimented on by Tech Tayun, who used the child's natural regeneration ability to help found Time Lord society, as was shown in the Series 12 finale story. This is an interesting plot point to say the least, and it adds a whole other mystery to the Doctor's shady backstory, although it possibly conflicts with other established origins for the Time Lords laid down by previous expanded media. Besides these contested origin points, however, the Doctor is first and foremost a traveller who wants to explore the universe and help justice be served wherever they can. The same cannot be said for some other Time Lords though, such as Mortimus, aka the Meddling Monk. The Monk is a Time Lord, the first we ever see in the show besides the Doctor and Susan, who appears to have broken away from Gallifrey and now spends his time travelling time and space, causing mayhem and mischief for the fun of it. Unlike other Time Lords such as the Master, the Monk does what he does purely for enjoyment. Not taking any of the times and places that he interferes with seriously, he sees it all as one big game, completely disregarding the rules of time travel and altering history. This is demonstrated with his first on-screen encounter with the Doctor, where he planned to help spin the outcome of the Battle of Hastings in favour of the English King Harold Godwinson. He planned to wipe out the Viking invasion force in the north to free up Harold's army to battle the French further south, thus enabling the English to win the battle instead of William of Normandy. The Monk believed that this would be the first step to advancing human civilization, having jet airliners by 1320 and having Shakespeare's play Hamlet broadcast on television in the playwright's lifetime, as he put it, although I'm paraphrasing slightly. The Doctor disagreed that his plan was beneficial to humanity and ignored the Monk's reasoning, calling him irresponsible and meddling. The Monk would go on to have several more encounters with the Doctor as other incarnations, and even survive post-Time War where he met the 12th Doctor. Ultimately, the Monk is one rogue Time Lord who puts his own enjoyment above the importance of timeline preservation, which I would imagine would make him a pretty troublesome individual in the Time Lord's eyes. The War Chief is the other renegade Time Lord from the 1960s era of Doctor Who. He appeared in the final story of the black and white days of the show as a sinister and mysterious character who is gradually revealed to be an old acquaintance of the Doctor throughout the 10-part War Games serial. In that story, he is helping the Warlords in their plot to build the ultimate army by providing them with modified TARDIS machines called Sidrats. The Warlords are defeated when the second Doctor intervenes and calls the High Council of Time Lords for assistance. Thinking the War Chief had betrayed them, the Warlords execute him, but he later regenerated on board one of their ships. The regeneration ran into problems, however, and became faulty, resulting in the War Chief's new body being grossly deformed and horrific in appearance. He would later go on to make amends with the Warlords and once again ally with them to try and alter history to make the Nazis win World War II. Their plan was essentially the same as it was in the War Games story, but the Nazis proved to be a much more effective source of soldiers than in any of the other wars they'd focused on previously. The fate of the War Chief after this second alliance is uncertain, as at the end of the novel Time Worm Exodus he is last seen engulfed in the fires of a destroyed base, apparently having changed into a normal looking body. Some accounts say that the War Chief is simply an earlier incarnation of the Master, but this idea has been conflicted numerous times. Personally, I believe them to be two separate Time Lords, but there has never been a solid yes or no answer given, at least as far as I am aware. And speaking of the Master, he is by far the most well-known Time Lord besides the Doctor. Like the Doctor, there's also not much new to say about the Master, besides many specific fun facts and strange things from expanded media. The Master is very simply the Doctor's antithesis, where the Doctor seeks to travel the universe and experience what it has to offer in a peaceful and passive way, only interfering when people need help or problems need fixing. The Master actively scours time and space for opportunities to gain power, take over civilizations, or simply plot against the Doctor, who was a former friend of his back on Gallifrey. He is the Doctor, but inverted, morally, ethically, and in motivation and philosophy. Not all rogue Time Lords are out to cause havoc in the universe or act as a travelling helpline, however. Drax is a Time Lord first introduced in the Season 16 finale, The Armageddon Factor. Drax is possibly best described as a Del Boy sort of character. He goes around the universe dealing in goods, sometimes weapons, and has a knack for technology and repair work. He also developed a Brixton accent and dialect during an extended stay on Earth.
Drax, I got one to private. Where did you acquire this peculiar vocabulary?
Brixton, wasn't it?
Brixton?
Brixton, London, Earth. Well, I had to learn the lingo, didn't I, to survive. Why? Is there something funny about the way I talk?
No. Ha!
His only TV appearance is his debut story, where he at first helped the villain The Shadow, although with some considerable dislike of having to do so, before assisting the Doctor in defeating him. Drax's other appearances in the Whoniverse are minimal, but his general demeanour and activities remain very consistent, somewhere between the Doctor and the Monk in that he has quite a light-hearted and laid-back approach to his travels, but has the moral decency to not be a total evil nuisance or psychopathic murderer. He'd probably make for some good company, just don't rely on him to fix your space cruiser or anything like that. Asmail is another one-time character in terms of TV appearances. An elderly appearing Time Lord on his 13th and final regeneration, he found himself under the psychic control of gastropod Mestor, who used him to help in his ambitious plan to spread his seeds across the universe. Asmail would eventually side with his old friend the Doctor and give his life to destroy Mestor and prevent the destruction of the planet Jaconda, which Mestor planned to blow up to complete his plans. Not much is known about Asmail before his appearance in the Twin Dilemma, other than that he left Gallifrey for one reason or another. There are a few conflicting reasons, surprise surprise, and that he is considered to be the first official renegade Time Lord from their society, being an inspiration to others such as the Doctor, the Master, and the Rani. And speaking of the Rani, she is a brilliant scientist and neurochemist, but utterly cold and ruthless. While not power-hungry or yearning for galactic conquest like the Master or the War Chief, she has an incredible case of tunnel vision when it comes to her scientific research. She often prioritised her work above all else, including the emotions of those her work affected, and any ethical implications were simply ignored by her at every juncture. She also didn't inherently have anything against the Doctor unless he directly interfered with her plans, which would happen quite often as many of the Rani's experiments were amoral and unethical, leading to the Doctor trying to put a stop to them. She also entered into an uneasy alliance with the Master on at least one occasion. If you had to sum up the Rani, she could be described as callous and unfeeling with an almost lethal dedication to her studies. The 11 is the first and only Time Lord in this video to be exclusive to the expanded universe, most prominently in Big Finish's audio ranges. The 11 is an insane Time Lord criminal with a strange condition called regenerative dissonance, essentially the Time Lord equivalent of multiple personality disorder, where each personality from previous regenerations remains at least semi-active within a Time Lord's current body. The 11's name changes with each incarnation, as is to be expected. He was first introduced as the 11 in his Big Finish debut, but would later go on to regenerate into a female incarnation called the 12. While in their previous incarnation, the 11 was shown many times to lose control and let his old personalities come to the surface, such as the 1, the 2, the 3, etc. The 12 seemed to have much more self-control over her old personalities. This was partly due to a neural inhibitor given to her by the Time Lords, but she also seemed to naturally have this control without the device too. The 11 had many run-ins with the 8th Doctor in the later parts of his life, specifically during the Doom Coalition and Ravenous series, as well as meeting the 7th Doctor and other incarnations here and there. Next we have Morbius. Morbius was a Time Lord rebel, formerly the president of the High Council, who tried to go against the ideals of Gallifreyan society, primarily the non-interference policy and wanting galactic conquest. After being deposed and executed, his followers, the Cult of Morbius, recovered his brain, which was later transplanted into a Frankenstein-together patchwork body on the planet Khan by scientist Mahendri Solan. This body was destroyed when the 4th Doctor arrived on the planet and rallied the Sisterhood of Khan against the creature. Morbius would later return in a restored body to do battle with the 8th Doctor. Overall, Morbius was a very ruthless and militaristic person, not someone to be trifled with. Barusa is an interesting figure in Time Lord history. He was once the Doctor's tutor for a time before later beginning a political career that would see him becoming the Lord President of Gallifrey by the time of the 5 Doctors anniversary special. Originally being a good guy character and general ally to the Doctor in most of his TV appearances, by the time of the 5 Doctors he had started to go mad with power and tried to gain immortality from the tomb of Rassilon. This led to him being imprisoned forever as a stone carving on Rassilon's tomb, at least until the 8th Doctor negotiated his release with Rassilon. I think Barusa is an interesting character as he started out as an ally and by the time of his last on-screen appearance he had developed into the primary antagonist of a story. Jumping over to the story Sharda now, we have Professor Chronotis. Chronotis was formerly a Time Lord criminal named Saliavin who was condemned and imprisoned in the Sharda prison for his highly dangerous mental powers and ability to control the minds of other beings. At some point he escaped from Sharda and regenerated, assuming the identity of Professor Chronotis. He seemed to move away from his past as a criminal where he lived on Earth as a professor at Cambridge University. When he summoned the 4th Doctor to come and recover a book that he had stolen from the Gallifreyan archives, Chronotis was killed by Dr. Skagra, but was later resurrected by his TARDIS. After Skagra's defeat, Chronotis went back to his life at Cambridge. Omega is a very prominent figure in the founding of Time Lord society, being one of the 2, or 3 depending on which accounts you believe, individuals responsible for Gallifrey becoming what it is in the show. He was a brilliant stellar engineer and led an expedition into a black hole to harness its power, which went on to provide the Time Lords with the power needed to develop time travel technology. Though thought dead by the other Time Lords, Omega in fact lived on, trapped inside the black hole in a world composed of antimatter. Being trapped there for so long, the forces governing the antimatter realm had worn his body away completely, leaving his will as the only remaining part of him to exist. He was incredibly resentful and vengeful towards his own people for abandoning him after his expedition and tried to return to N-Space on more than one occasion to seek revenge, but each time was unsuccessful due to the Doctor or some other opposing influence. And lastly, there's the Valeyard. The Valeyard, while technically being his own Time Lord, was a being ultimately created by combining the darker aspects of the Doctor's personality from a point between his 12th and final incarnation. His origins are unclear beyond that information though. The Doctor first met the Valeyard when he was chosen to prosecute the Doctor in a trial during his 6th incarnation. The trial was staged to cover up the fact that the Time Lords had almost destroyed Earth by trying to hide their secrets that had previously been stolen and hidden there. The planet was moved across space and renamed Ravelox, where the Doctor later arrived and began to uncover the truth, leading to the High Council instigating the trial. The Valeyard seized the opportunity to frame the Doctor and have him executed, where he would steal his remaining 7 regenerations. He was defeated and would later go on to terrorise the 6th Doctor in particular, even being responsible for his regeneration into the 7th Doctor. Overall, the Valeyard was the opposite of the Doctor, similar to the Master. Perhaps opposite isn't quite the right word though. He shares a lot of the Doctor's more darker traits, such as cunning and manipulation, but has a primarily evil motivation. He's a character I'd like to see come back in the main show someday, that's for sure. And that's all the Rogue Time Lords I'm going to talk about in this video. This is by no means all of the renegade Time Lords in the Whoniverse, but I felt like they were the most prominent of the lot. I'm sure this ended up being quite a long video, but if you did stick through to the end then I really appreciate it. Next time we'll be covering the planet Desolation from the Ghost Monument. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye for now.